Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our webinar, Document Management for Manufacturing. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by my colleague Damien as well, who will be taking us through a bit of a demo later on of the document management solution, DocuWare. Before we kick off, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's a chat box, and there's an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have at the bottom. And Damien and myself will do our best to go through as many of those as we can towards the end. So what are we hoping to cover today? Well, we want to look at why we believe businesses within the manufacturing sector can benefit from a document management solution like DocuWare. We also want to touch on how we can improve productivity and collaboration. And we want to discuss that balancing act between ensuring that you're secure and compliant whilst providing instant access to documents and to processes, which of course we know is extremely important, especially with mobile working. As you may have seen on the agenda, we also want to talk about how we can look to reduce stress on the IT department while ensuring that we are future-proofing the business technology-wise. And because we are discussing businesses within the manufacturing sector, on the demo, we also want to look at version control of documents, which we know is very important, and also some of the automated workflow as well. So just a quick intro to AMS. So we've been around since 1992, and we've got a lot of experience when it comes to implementing document management solutions into businesses within the manufacturing sector. And we're lucky enough to partner with DocuWare, who are one of the world's leading document management solution providers. And when we talk to our contacts within the manufacturing sector and our customers, what we tend to find is that there's really a key driver amongst everyone that we talk to. And that is that they really want to try and gain a competitive advantage. And they look at solutions such as DocuWare to do this by using systems to ensure a more transparent process around document production and storage, but also around the automated workflow as well. Of course, it's essential these days to produce an environment for your users where they're able to be productive and easily collaborate on documents and processes. Now, of course, with DocuWare, you're able to digitize paper records, but also allow users to instantly search and retrieve on them. And this could be engineers, factory floor managers, for example, customer service reps, accounting and other departments. So they can search and retrieve on these documents very quickly and easily, as we'll see later on the demo, but also securely and easily exchange information. And we understand that regulation is extremely important for businesses within the manufacturing sector as well. And if you ever need to, you can use DocuWare to easily compile an extensive documentation list that regulators may need in a searchable and secure format. And they can actually access these documents from your DocuWare system, but they won't have the ability, of course, to see any of your other documents. And just to talk about collaboration a little bit, lots of businesses quite often come to us and they want the users to leverage the existing applications in-house. So maybe users are used to using an ERP system, for example, or a CRM system, or maybe a certain finance system. And you can actually utilize DocuWare in the back end and just allow users to use the existing system while accessing documents and processes automatically via hotkeys and a button called Smart Connect, which we'll touch on a bit of detail a bit later on. So going back to this discussion around allowing access, instant access, but also trying to restrict access where possible. So this sort of balancing act between the two. Now, we briefly touched on powerful search and retrieval, and DocuWare has the ability to what we call OCR, all of the documents within the system, which means it starts to learn and read those documents. So you can type in a keyword or a key phrase and allow the user to access all documents that contain that word or contain that phrase that they've got permission to see, of course, within a couple of clicks. But just to add to that, we've also got functionality such as version control, which we know is extremely important for businesses within the manufacturing sector. So thanks to this functionality, we can pick up on the originator of a certain document and the timestamp of any changes for that document. And of course, that's tracked in an audit trail. So if queries do arise for a particular job or particular department or particular user, you can easily and quickly clarify them and hopefully avoid any errors. Now, the functionality of workflow also gives users instant access to documents and to processes. And workflow is really designed to instantly route a document to the right person or the right approver at the right time. And this could be whether they're on a mobile device or whether they're in head office. So of course, we've got the access and we've got version control in there as well, but how do you restrict it? Now, we're quite lucky with DocuWare that you can be extremely granular with the permissions, which means you can restrict unauthorized viewing and access to these documents and to these processes down to a user level, all in line with GDPR. So just before I pass you over to Damien, I wanted just to quickly touch on IT. So what about IT and IT's role? And how do we look to reduce the stress on IT while future-proofing the business? So the first thing to mention is that we like to think DocuWare is extremely intuitive and user-friendly, and it's got the ability to flex with your department's requirements as they expand. So you very rarely need IT to roll out the solution either in your department or into other departments. And as I mentioned earlier, we've also got functionalities such as Smart Connect, where users can be within an existing application, an ERP, a CRM, or a finance system, for example, and they can utilize DocuWare in the back end. And of course, this means that IT don't have to worry about training users on an additional system. Now, DocuWare comes in two options. It comes in a cloud option and an on-premise option, but by far, DocuWare Cloud is the most popular way of our customers implementing the solution. And of course, this means that IT don't have to worry about spending a lot of budget on servers. And also the functionality is exactly the same, whether you have 2 or 3 users or whether you have the whole business using the solution. So they don't have to worry about future costs when they come to actually expand the solution and roll it out to other departments. And just to quickly mention a point around security at a higher level, as you would expect with a solution like DocuWare, we can offer you the top of the range encryption. Everything is hosted in the Microsoft Azure data center. And of course, this protects you against hacking or malware or other illegal acts that can target your technology infrastructure, whilst ensuring disaster recovery against any natural disasters that may arise. So that's probably enough from me for now. So I'm going to pass you over to Damien, who'll take you through a brief demo of DocuWare, and I'll then come back at the end to summarize a few points.
Great, thanks, Chris. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, you can see your screen. I'm just going to spotlight it as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Great. So while I run through the demo, it's probably worth noting that everything you see is just what I've set up to try and show some of the features and the functionality in DocuWare and raise some ideas where it might work for you. Everything that I've done can be configured based on your requirements and preferences, so it's completely configurable and bespoke to your situation. Now, as you can see, DocuWare is accessible via a web browser, so you can use it from any device, anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection. There's also mobile apps as well for iOS and Android, so if you're using your phone or tablet, you can use the functionality through that, it's easier. Now I'll just give a quick tour of the web browser interface so we can see document trays. And you can have lots of different document trays, maybe for different document types. And this is generally where you would capture a document, say from a scanner, from a folder, from email, and then go ahead and store it. You'll notice these documents are color coded as well. They're all green because I've stored them lots of times, but this is because of DocuWare's intelligent indexing AI engine. And it basically learns as you store documents. So it does its best to capture the index information for you to try and make your job as easy as possible. We have the search option, and again, you can choose your virtual file cabinet, and we can have different dialogues for searching if you want something more comprehensive or just a simple search. And we have lists. So lists are just saved searches, and you can see a few that I've created here, but it's a useful way of keeping an eye on documents as they move through the business. So we can see how many invoices we have out for approval. I've got a supplier mismatch here, maybe it's a new supplier, and any documents that have outstanding pending changes. Tasks, this is just where you actually have to do something, and we can have a look at my tasks. And here's the supplier mismatch document where I can kind of create a new supplier or reject that task. We also have monitor tasks. Because I am a workflow controller, I can see all of the tasks assigned to every user within the organization. Folders, now this is just a different way of browsing your documents. Rather than searching by index values like in here, you can just browse them by a virtual folder structure. We'll be using this one in a moment. You can see it's empty, but this will contain our project files. And forms. So forms can be public or private, and they're a great way of capturing information from users, suppliers, external contacts, internal people requesting things. And it can be used to trigger a workflow, create multiple documents. It's quite a powerful tool. And that's what we're going to start off with. So with this being based on manufacturing, maybe one of the processes you might use this for is to initiate a project or to request a product development. So in the form, we've got different types of input, and we can use this either as index values or as a rule. So for instance, if I clicked on yes for confidential, maybe it goes to management for approval. If it goes to no, maybe it goes to the project team. I can select my user account here, and that just means that any notifications about this request will go to me. And I'm going to select something from a drop-down list. So let's say this is going to be for project team 1. The way I've set this up, I need to give it a name as well, because this is what's going to tie all of these documents together. And we need to give it a description. Obviously, if you're actually doing this for real, there's probably going to be a lot more information in here. You might want to add documents or kind of supporting information, but I'm just going to keep it really simple and click on submit. So by submitting that form, this is going to trigger a workflow, and it's going to maybe have a look at the project team that it's related to, who I am, whether it's a confidential request, and decide who to notify that there's an outstanding task. So we can see that in here, project requisition, really simple and straightforward. What I can do as well, actually, I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between the web client and my mobile. So this should pop up in a moment, or I can just use the web browser to go ahead and authorize that task. So now that that's been approved, I've set it up to drop me an email just to mention that my project request has been approved. And you can dynamically create these messages. So I've just used kind of project name, but you could add anything else that you wanted in here. And it means that I can get on with the task of kind of collating the information that I need to get started with the project. So if I go to folders, we can see here now that we should have a new project folder. And here's the project requisition form. So let's say I've started looking at materials for the project, and I've got some sheets on the steel that I want to add to the project folder. And you notice, because I've dragged and dropped them into the project folder, it's automatically inherited the project name. So this is just going to be a declaration of performance, and it's for this company. This is another really useful thing with DocuWare, is you don't really have to type anything. You can just kind of point and click at the index information you want. So this is a material specification sheet for this company, and go ahead and store. So really quick to add new documents. We can see the project folders starting to grow, and it really helps all of the people involved in the project have access to all the information they need to collaborate on that project and try and get things done as quickly as possible. So the next thing I might want to add is, let's say I've researched the materials, and now we've done a drawing on OpenCAD. So we've got a DWG CAD file to start kind of working on the construction. So we're just going to say this is a drawing. Company is, we made this, and we can go ahead and store it. So now everyone's working on this particular project, and we're reviewing the documentation and maybe looking at the drawing. This whole folder is managed by version control, because one of the things that crops up quite regularly with manufacturing is we need to make sure that people are working from the most recent version of documents. You know, there's nothing worse than somebody start making something and then finding out that the design has changed after they've made it. So if we go into the drawing, we can go ahead and check it out. Now, if this was like a Word document, we could edit it in Word. We could also check out documents to Office 365 as well. But because this is obviously a CAD drawing, we would probably just check it out to the file system, open it in OpenCAD, make the changes we needed, and then check it back in. But I'm just going to, for the sake of the demo, check it out to my inbox. We'll notice that it's marked as checked out now. So no one else can do anything with this because it's kind of locked for any changes. So I'll go back to document trays and my inbox. We can see the CAD drawing. So let's say I've made the changes, dragged it into my inbox. I can go ahead and check it back in. We can decide on major and minor versions. So let's say it's a minor version change, and I've just put some new struts in there. So now I should have in my lists, we now have a document that's got some pending changes. We've now got a task to say, hey, project team, because you can assign a task to one person or maybe a group of people based on their role. But I've basically said, here we go, there's some changes here, you need to double check them. We can go to the version overview. We can have a look at each of the previous versions if there's multiple versions of the document. And we can have a look at the change comments. If I disagree with this, I could just right click and select the previous version as the current version, and they maybe reject the changes. But let's say I'm happy with these changes and I can confirm them. You'll also notice there was an email in the background to review those changes, but it's just a really helpful way of keeping everybody in the team up to date and let them know that something's going on so that they don't start working on an old document. So now we've kind of confirmed the changes to the drawing. We're happy with the materials that we're using. Maybe we're going out and getting some quotes. The next thing we might want to do is actually raise a purchase order request. So similar to the other form, we can just fill this out. Forms can be dynamic too. So you'll notice, is this for a new supplier? Yes, it comes up with new supplier name. No, I can choose from a list of existing suppliers. So I'm buying this from this steel company. Number of items required. So I'm going to say there's 4 items we need. So we need some girders, and we need some rails, and we need some bolts. So I can just type in the quantities. And because all of these documents are being stored and they are linked to each other, we can check the quantities and the values and make sure everything's right. So how much is this for? We're going to say it's quite an expensive order. Again, sign for it. You could add some other documents like the quotes or some information about the product code, something like that. But we'll just click on submit. And shortly we should have a task pop up to check the purchase order requisition. Now you notice I clicked on monitor tasks. This is because this is assigned to the finance manager. But I can go ahead and approve that on their behalf. And let's say I need to raise a purchase order number. So here's the purchase order number I've created in our finance system. Click and confirm. And then that's that task done. So again, I should have an email to say my purchase order request has been approved. Here's my purchase order number. Go ahead and raise the order with the supplier. So let's say I've raised that order with a supplier, and now I'm going to be the production manager. So this is where maybe I could use my phone and use one of the search options. So I want to check to see if the materials have been received so we can get started on production. So I'm going to look for delivery notes for US Steel. So here we can see the delivery note. Doesn't look like there's been any non-delivered items. We can see it's been signed for. So I now know all the materials should be in the warehouse, and I can go ahead and pick them up and get started on production. We can also use the search option in the web client. So if I, again, we could use the index value, so document type, company, invoice number, but I'm actually going to use full text search. So I'm going to say, give me all the documents that have a girder and bolts in it. So we can see here, we have the PO requisition, and you can see the words that we've searched for highlighted. We've got the delivery note, and we can see orders raised, delivery notes received, and the purchase orders raised. So we've kind of got all of those matching documents for the project. So now that we've got the materials, the next logical step would be the supplier sends us an invoice. And DocuWare can integrate with email in multiple ways. It can look at an email account directly. You can have a watch folder here where you can just drag and drop emails into them. Or you can just right-click an attachment, select Store in DocuWare. And again, these are just some store options I've created, and I just want the attachment. And this will move it into the intelligent indexing tray. I'm using line item capture. I happen rather quickly, but normally you'll see a little gray bar going up and down in the left-hand corner as the intelligent indexing AI engine is trying to turn that document into information and figure out if it's seen it before and if it understands the index structure. We can see it's green, and intelligent indexing is confident that it's captured the information correctly. So if you just go ahead and store that, we can go ahead and choose. You'll notice the intelligent indexing store dialogues because they've got a little light bulb next to them. And we can see all of the values green. As I click on them, DocuWare quite handily highlights them on the right-hand side so you can visually check that it's captured that information correctly. If it hasn't, we can just, this is how we train it. So if it hadn't captured the order number, we can just say, here we go, this is the order number, and next time it will know where to pick that information up from. We can see the net amounts match the purchase order and the purchase order requisition. We can also capture line item data here, so we can see we've got the part numbers, descriptions, totals, that kind of thing. We just need to give it a project name because, again, we're using related documents. You might see kind of document relations on the right-hand side when we search for documents, and we'll just go ahead and store that. Now, what I've done with this workflow is the first step is to code the invoice. A lot of the companies we work with need to apply nominal codes to each of the line items and maybe assign cost centers. So let me just make this a bit bigger. And we can go ahead, and if there was a lot of line items and most of them were one code, we can just code the other items that aren't. We can also use cost centers, and this is quite useful for approval processes. So by choosing a cost center, we can say assign this or these amounts to the cost center manager for logistics. I've only coded 2 line items, so I'm just going to select a default nominal code for all other line items. And now that's done, we can click on confirm. Now you probably noticed the supply mismatch. What DocuWare is going to do is going to check that this is for an approved supplier, that there is a corresponding purchase order that has been raised and the values match, that there's a corresponding delivery note with the status of received, and if it matches all of those things, then automatically approve it. However, we'll notice this has gone to the approve over 5,000. Again, we should be able to see in our invoices for approval as well. And the reason is because of the value. So although it's matched, and we'll have a look at the workflow history, and we can see it's gone through. Here's me coding it, and here's the matching process. Then it's checking the value and assigning to a director because of the value. So we just need to go ahead and say, yeah, that's okay. Click on confirm, and then it will come back through to pay. If we were having to approve it, one of the things we might do is the related documents that I mentioned. And you can see on the right-hand side, we can see all the related documents, so delivery notes, invoices. We can right-click and select related documents, so we can have a look at the delivery notes. We could have a look at the purchase orders. So we can double check all of these match. And what's also handy, because I assigned a project name to it, we can have a look at all of the project documents too. So I've got project related documents, click on that, and we can see here, here's the drawing with the changes we talked about, and they're all confirmed, material specifications, project requisition forms. But it just means that within a couple of clicks, every piece of information you might need should be at your fingertips, whether it's through a web browser or through your mobile phone. So if I just go ahead and complete that task and pay the invoice. Now, before I've been using these buttons down here, but you can also use a stamp. When you do have a workflow action, you can get it to assign a stamp automatically, so there's a visual history. But we could just confirm that. And we'll go ahead and mark it as paid. So that's it for the demonstration. One thing I was also going to show you was our website. So if you go to ams-dms.com/news, you can see some other recordings and information here. And this is quite a good one if you wanted to delve into the finance side of things in a bit more detail and look at how we can integrate with other applications. But I'll hand you back to Chris.
Great, thanks, Damien. Some really good points there. Let me just summarize a couple of them before we end the webinar. Give me 1 second. Great. Can you see my screen okay, Damien?
Yeah, that's all.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that. So on these webinars, we're always very short on time, but really Damien's just scratched the surface there, what DocuWare can achieve when looking at document types and processes within the manufacturing sector. So I've put this slide up really as just, I suppose, a little bit of a statement to say that if you do have a particular document type or particular process in mind, and you're not quite sure whether DocuWare can work with it or whether DocuWare is fit for purpose, what I will say is just please ask the question. We've got a lot of experience in this sector, and I'd be surprised if we haven't come across a particular document type or process in the past. And of course, we should be able to advise you quite quickly whether DocuWare can cater for your particular process or whether perhaps another piece of software would be better suited. And we always put this statement at the end of our webinars, and it's something that we say to all of our customers and contacts that are looking to implement document management. And we'd always suggest to try and start as simply as possible. So if you pick on a particular department or particular process and just look to digitize that department or process, and then when you're ready and the users are ready, you can work with us to roll out the solution and implement more sophisticated workflows. So that concludes the webinar. Thanks again for your time, and thanks again for viewing the webinar. If you do want to get in contact, there are some contact details at the bottom of the screen. Of course, if you do have an account manager, please feel free to reach out. You may see a personalized demo button pop up as well, so please feel free to click that if you'd like us to get in contact with you and perhaps understand a bit more about your requirements and put together a personalized demo for you. But thanks again for your time, and I think we'll go through those questions. So we've got a question here, Damien. I like the look of how the forms integrate into the platform. Does this mean workers on the shop floor can access these from their tablet?
Yeah, absolutely. So all you need is an internet connection. It's just a website, and these forms can be public or private. So you don't even need a user account in order to access them and fill them out. So yeah, absolutely. You could publish them. The workers can access them on a tablet, and it doesn't matter what the tablet is because it's just a website.
Brilliant. We produce around 160 boxes of paper a year. Can we just batch scan these into the system?
Cool. Yeah. So there's a couple of different modules with DocuWare. If the paper you're talking about is formatted in the same way, so let's say it's delivery notes or purchase orders or something like that, then we can create a document capture profile which can store those automatically. And you can kind of batch scan them into a folder, and the document processing app will pick it up and store them into DocuWare. You can separate pages with barcodes or separator sheets, or we can look for keyword changes on those documents as well. But yeah, it's absolutely possible.
Brilliant, thanks, Damien. The names of our suppliers referenced in our ERP and are sometimes written differently to the invoices and delivery notes received. Can you deal with varying supplier names when matching supplier names?
Yeah, this does come up occasionally, where maybe someone's called ABC Limited or ABC Incorporated or something like that. Within DocuWare, when we're doing lookups, we can create data records for the suppliers, and we can create multiple data records for the same supplier. So effectively, if you're using supplier codes, and I was as part of the demo, so during that supplier matching process, I was looking at the supplier record and retrieving the supplier code, because the supplier code will be the unique value that ties those records together, even when the supplier names don't match. So yeah, so basically what we do is we create aliases within the data records within DocuWare to kind of get past that situation.
Great, thanks, Damien. Looks like we've got one more here. Can we segment the different documents across the business so our finance documents are not mixed in with our sales collateral, for example?
Brilliant. So this is where segmentation is good within DocuWare, and generally you would have different file cabinets or different virtual digital file cabinets for different areas of the business, and you can even sub-segment it. So maybe in finance or in sales, you could have different file cabinets for those areas. But yeah, you just create a different file cabinet, a different index structure, and you can map that to different users so that you can control who sees what, who's involved with which area of the business. But yeah, absolutely. You can use this across typically finance and manufacturing documents, but also HR, sales, basically anything that's got a document-driven process you can use DocuWare for.
Brilliant. Thanks, Damien. We've got another question here about licensing and whether there's a cloud and an on-premise option. And yeah, the answer is yes. So there's two options. There's a cloud and on-premise option. The cloud option is banded in terms of users. The functionality is exactly the same, whether you have a small team using it or the whole business using the solution. And of course, if you we'll drop you a line after this, we can give you an idea around some pricing, how that works. The on-premise option is slightly different. It's built up in modules in terms of functionality and users. So I'd say probably majority of our DocuWare implementations are cloud-based. But that concludes the webinar. But we appreciate your time again, and thanks again for your questions. And if you do want to get in contact, please feel free. And thanks again, and hope to see you on the next one.